Now, drag performers across Canada are also facing threats to their safety, leading to their shows being cancelled. In many cases, it's also family-friendly drag performances, such as Drag Story Time. For more on this, we're joined by Crystal Quartz, a drag performer who says their event was targeted by social media campaigns. She joins us from Guelph, Ontario. And we're also joined by Heidi Klassen, a writer and parent who has attended family-friendly drag shows with her own children. She is in Calgary, and I thank you both for being with us tonight. Let's start with you, Crystal. How did you feel when you heard that your drag brunch event had to be canceled?
Well, I was devastated. I create safe environments, and they're very inclusive for children. I make sure that the show is ready for children. So I was quite upset because that's my job, that's my livelihood, and they're threatening the safe spaces that we're creating.
Heidi, what's your reaction to hear about drag events being targeted and canceled due to safety reasons?
Well, I think what's happened to Crystal and what's happening to so many drag performers and their audiences, it's not about protecting children. This is blatant homophobia, thinly veiled as child protection. I've taken my sons to drag events, and they're family friendly. They're all ages events. These are not the same drag shows that you find at nightclubs. So it's a family friendly environment, and I think people really don't understand what that means when it comes to drag performance.
So, Crystal, your event was family-friendly, and some parents were looking to attend with their children. What was their reaction then when they heard it was no longer happening? And are they aware it's partly because of hate?
Yeah, they're aware of why we decided to pull the event, and they were upset because their kids look forward to this. I guess I've heard from the parents the weeks leading after the child, it's all they can talk about is how much fun they had at this drag show, and they dance around the house pretending they're me, and it just leaves them with so much love.
Heidi, your family has attended these shows, and you're also fans of that RuPaul's Drag Race. What kinds of conversation does watching drag spark in your household?
Well, my middle son came out a couple of years ago, and drag performance has really helped him with his self-esteem, with his self-confidence. It's helped him to see himself reflected in popular media. And I think that's really important, especially for kids who are, belong to marginalized groups like the LGBTQ. I think people forget that this is a performance. And, take an example like Bob Saget. He was a beloved TV dad on Full House or America's Funniest Home Video. But he was also a raunchy stand-up comic. So there are different performances for different audiences, and family-friendly drag is exactly what it says it is. It's family-friendly. It does not have adult content. It's not sexualized.
So Heidi, do you think, or how do you think then communities and officials can work together to prevent threats like this from happening in the future and shutting this down?
Well, I think people need to see this for what it is and need to see these protests as really expressions of hate. And these performers need to be protected. They're just doing their job. They're putting on a show, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody's getting hurt. I think we need to look at what's really hurting kids. Threats of violence hurts kids. Shame and secrecy, low self-esteem, not being accepted as who you are. That's what's really hurting kids.
Crystal, I know you have an event coming up this weekend. I hate to ask you about this, but what kinds of extra precautions are being put in place to help now with safety?
So we've hired security guards for the day, as well as off-duty police officers. And then we also have the police that are going to be there as well for that evening. So it's definitely up to our costs.
and as you're doing not only club performances, but you're going to need this kind of protection even when you're doing like story time readings?
So I don't personally do story time readings, but the people that do,
the community, yes.
I think that community does need this kind of protection now, because, it only takes one crazy person to snap, right? And, judging by what they're saying online and all the hate, there's a lot of hate coming from them. So I'm just waiting for it.
It must be pretty scary. What do you think drives this kind of rhetoric and threats that we are seeing towards the LGBT community?
I think it's just purely ignorance. They just don't understand it. So, and when you don't understand something, you're fearful of it, or, it's also discriminatory. They're thinking that the kind of drag I'm doing there is what they see in a nightclub. I don't work in nightclubs. It's not the kind of drag I do. I do mostly day shows, and I work in universities and in restaurants and, that kind of stuff.
Heidi, you've been trying to differentiate and explain to people, so I'm putting the same question to you.
Well, I think what Crystal says is true. There is a big difference between what happens in a nightclub and what happens at a family-friendly drag show. And this is ultimately a parent's decision, just as you would decide whether or not to take your child to a movie.
That's a good point. Crystal, do you want to tell people about drag shows for those who may be hesitant to take their children to one of the family-friendly events? I'll start with you, Crystal. Heidi, I would like you to jump in on this too before I let you go.
So basically what we do is we have a brunch there, and I come out and I do different songs and different characters, and I lighten the mood and basically empower people to feel the freedom to be their true authentic selves. And it leaves people just feeling so happy after.
Heidi?
I agree. Drag performance it's hilarious, and it throws pop culture on its head, and it makes people smile. It gives people confidence. It allows kids to really just be themselves. And that's why I would encourage parents to try it. And if you don't want to, don't allow your kids to see drag, but I don't think you should stop other kids from seeing it.
Crystal, we see the dangers, right? And we hear, especially what happened in the clubs in the US and places like that. As you're out there performing, do you really worry about your safety because you know what could happen? I mean, the worst of it?
Oh, absolutely.
Constantly.
Yeah. No, like before I was never really scared of doing what I did because I didn't find any of this ignorance anywhere. But now I'm checking the exits. I'm checking people's pockets, looking to see if there's anybody suspicious. And, it creates this paranoia of me, like if I'm accepting a tip from somebody to see if they're going to do something else when I grab that tip. So it's definitely infected things.
And Heidi, I've actually hosted drag shows during Pride here in Toronto in the Village. How do we get people to open up their minds more about this, Heidi?
Well, I think really it's just not taking your preconceived notions about what something might be about. Drag has evolved a lot, and it's more inclusive to, the trans community, and even, heteronormative people are doing drag as well. I think it's before people judge something and make assumptions about what it's going to be like, they really need to see it for themselves, and, to allow parents to make these decisions for their kids.
Yeah, you guys are both helping to get away some of that ignorance tonight, and I thank you. That was drag performer Crystal Quartz and Heidi Klassen, a writer and parent who has attended family-friendly drag shows with her children. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you, Joyce.